That seat belongs to me! This boarding pass proves otherwise!
Leave this aircraft immediately!
You are abusing your authority! Her seat is confirmed. Burn! I am the owner of this airline!
I made a terrible mistake!
The woman in seat 1A had no idea that, before the aircraft even left the ground, the captain would threaten to remove her from a company she secretly owned. Olivia Bennett sat beside the oval window of the Meridian Elite charter jet, her hands resting calmly over a plain leather handbag. Outside, ground crews moved beneath the pale morning sun at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. Fuel trucks rolled past. A baggage cart rattled over the concrete. Somewhere beneath the cabin floor, a hydraulic pump hummed, then fell silent. Inside, everything looked flawless. Cream leather seats, polished walnut panels, soft white lighting, fresh flowers near the forward galley. It was the kind of cabin designed to make wealthy passengers feel protected from the ordinary world. Olivia knew every detail. She had approved the renovation budget herself, but no one on board knew who she was. That was the point. At 48, Olivia had spent more than 20 years building Meridian Elite Charter from a small regional operation into one of the most respected private aviation companies in the country. She had signed the contracts, approved the safety standards, chosen the executive team. Her photograph, however, rarely appeared in public. She avoided interviews. She disliked industry galas. She believed a leader learned more by listening unnoticed than by entering a room surrounded by applause. That morning, she wore a simple navy coat, a gray blouse, and comfortable black shoes. No designer logo, no assistant, no security detail. To the crew, she was simply Olivia Bennett, a passenger traveling alone from New Jersey to Palm Beach. Her boarding profile had been deliberately stripped of executive status. Only two at corporate headquarters knew she was conducting an unannounced service audit. Olivia looked toward the galley. A young flight attendant named Sophia Reed was arranging crystal glasses on a silver tray. Her movements were careful but slightly tense. She checked each glass twice, smoothed a napkin, glanced toward the cabin door. Sophia was 32 and still new to private aviation. She had worked commercial routes for nearly 8 years before joining Meridian. The pay was better here. The passengers were fewer, the expectations were higher, and the mistakes were remembered. Sophia noticed Olivia watching and offered a professional smile. "May I bring you coffee before departure?" "Black coffee would be wonderful," Olivia said. "Of course." Sophia turned toward the galley, then paused. "Ms. Bennett, is the cabin temperature comfortable?" "It is. Thank you for asking." The question was small, the tone mattered more. Sophia had made eye contact. She had used Olivia's name. She had not judged her clothes or assumed what she wanted. Olivia quietly noted it. So far, the young woman was doing well. At the front of the aircraft, Captain Nathan Brooks stepped out of the cockpit. He was 52, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, and confident in the way of men who had been obeyed for a long time. He spoke briefly with a ground coordinator near the door. "We need to close up on schedule," Nathan said. "Palm Beach traffic gets worse by this hour." The coordinator nodded. Nathan glanced through the cabin. His eyes moved over Olivia, but only for a second. No greeting, no introduction. He looked instead toward the empty seats behind her, then returned to the cockpit. Olivia watched him disappear behind the door. She did not write anything down. She rarely needed to. She remembered tone, posture, the length of a pause. The people a leader noticed, and the people a leader did not. A few minutes later, footsteps sounded on the boarding stairs. Sharp, fast, impatient. A woman entered the cabin wearing a cream-colored suit and oversized sunglasses. Caroline Whitman was 56, carefully styled, and visibly irritated before anyone had spoken to her. Behind her came her husband, David Whitman, 60, carrying 2 phones and speaking into one of them. "No, tell Collins we will review the numbers after we land," David said. "I am not approving anything until legal signs off." Caroline stopped in the aisle. Her gaze landed on Olivia. Then on the small metal plate beside the window, 1A, the cabin seemed to tighten. Sophia Slowed removed her sunglasses. Sophia stepped forward. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitman. Welcome back." She stared, not answer. She stared at Olivia as if she had found someone inside her home. "Excuse me," Olivia turned her head. Caroline pointed toward the seat. "You are sitting in my place." Sophia's smile faded slightly. David lowered his phone. Olivia remained still. "I believe this is seat 1A, she said. "Yes," Caroline replied. "It is. Her voice carried the certainty of someone who had rarely been challenged. Olivia reached into her handbag and removed her boarding card. That is the seats listed on my reservation. Caroline did not look at it. Instead, her eyes moved over Olivia's coat, her shoes, and the modest bag in her lap. The judgment happened in silence. It was quick. It was familiar. Sophia stepped closer. Mrs. Whitman, let me verify the seating assignment. Caroline raised one hand. There was nothing to verify. I always sit in 1A. David exhaled and glanced toward the cockpit, already annoyed by the delay. Caroline, maybe there was a scheduling change. There was no change, she said. Someone made a mistake. She looked directly at Olivia, and it was not me. Sophia held out her hand politely. Ms. Bennett, may I see your boarding card? Olivia gave it to her. Sophia checked the printed name, then the seat number, then the passenger list on her tablet. Her expression became careful. Ms. Bennett is correctly assigned to seat 1A. For one brief moment, no one spoke. Then Caroline gave a cold, disbelieving laugh. That cannot be right. Sophia's fingers tightened slightly around the tablet. I have confirmed it twice. Caroline stepped closer to Olivia. The soft cabin lights reflected in her narrowed eyes. Well, she said, then someone at your company clearly does not understand its own clientele. The words were quiet, but everyone heard them. Olivia studied Caroline's face. There was no confusion there, no honest misunderstanding. Only entitlement sharpened by an assumption Caroline had already decided was true. Olivia took back her boarding card and placed it on her lap. What exactly do you mean by that? She asked. Caroline's mouth tightened. Sophia stopped breathing for half a second. David looked away. And behind the closed cockpit door, the captain had not yet realized that the most important test of his career had already begun. Caroline held Olivia's gaze for several seconds, as if waiting for her to become embarrassed and move on her own. Olivia did not move. The quiet inside the cabin grew heavier. The air system whispered through the ceiling vents. A service cart clicked softly against its by the window. A ground crew member raised one arm and signaled toward the tug vehicle. Sophia stood between the two women, holding her tablet close to her waist. Mrs. Whitman, she said carefully, your assigned seat is 1C. It is directly across the aisle. Caroline turned toward her. I know what the tablet says. Her voice was calm, but the calm had an edge. I am telling you that I always sit by the window. Sophia swallowed. I understand that may be your preference, but Miss Bennett has a confirmed reservation for this seat. Caroline gave her a thin smile. You are new, aren't you? Sophia's shoulders stiffened. I joined Meridian 6 months ago. That explains it. David slipped his phone into his jacket pocket. He glanced at his watch, then toward the closed cabin door. Can we solve this without turning it into a production? Olivia looked at him. It was solved before your wife boarded. The reservation is clear. David's eyes moved to her boarding card. For the first time, he actually looked at the name. Ms. Bennett, my wife has a long history with this company. So do I, Olivia said. Caroline let out a small laugh. No offense, but I doubt that. The words landed exactly as she intended. Sophia's face changed. It was only a slight movement around the eyes, but Olivia saw it. The young attendant had heard this kind of language before, not always the same words, but the same message. You do not belong here. You still have not explained why you believe I should give up a seat that belongs to me. Caroline crossed her arms. Because this is private aviation. There are relationships, expectations. Certain passengers are accommodated, and others are not. Caroline tilted her head. I did not say that. You did not need to. David rubbed his forehead. Caroline, but she was no longer interested in ending the conflict. She wanted to win it. She leaned slightly toward Sophia. Call the captain. Sophia hesitated. There is no operational issue, Mrs. Whitman. I did not ask for your opinion. Sophia's fingers pressed harder against the edge of the tablet. Olivia could see the conflict inside her. Training told her to remain polite. Experience told her that wealthy passengers often complain direct to executives. Fear told her that one wrong sentence could end a career she had worked years to build. Still, Sophia did not step away. The seating record is accurate, she said. Moving Ms. Bennett without her consent would be inappropriate. Yes, Ma. Yes, Ma. The answer was soft, but it was firm. For a moment, Olivia felt something beneath the anger in the cabin. Respect. Not the kind purchased through status. The kind earned by doing the right thing when there was a cost. Caroline turned toward the cockpit. Captain Brooks, her voice carried through the forward cabin. A few seconds later, the cockpit door opened. Nathan Brooks stepped out with a headset hanging around his neck. His expression showed controlled irritation. He had been reviewing departure clearance and weather routing. Now he saw a dispute delaying his schedule. What seems to be the problem? Caroline answered before anyone else could speak. This passenger is in my seat and your flight attendant refuses to correct it. Sophia's mouth opened. Captain, the manifest confirms that Ms. Bennett is assigned to 1A. Nathan looked at the tablet, but only briefly. Then he looked at Caroline. Mrs. Whitman usually occupies that seat. Sophia nodded once. I understand. But today she is assigned to 1C. Nathan shifted his attention to Olivia. His eyes moved over her clothes again. Slowly this time, Olivia saw the calculation process who a. He knew Caroline. He knew David. He knew the Whitmans were connected to Collins Global, one of Meridian's largest corporate clients. He did not know Olivia. That should not have mattered. But it did. Miss Bennett, Nathan said, using the steady tones often used during turbulence. Would you be willing to move across the aisle so we can get everyone settled? Aussie looked at the empty seat, then back at him. No. The word was quiet. Nathan blinked. It is the same cabin. The seats are nearly identical. Then Mrs. Whitman should have no difficulty sitting there. Caroline's face tightened. That is not toward her. Then, what is the point? No one answered. Nathan drew a slow breath. Ms. Bennett, we are trying to depart on time. I am asking for a simple courtesy. Olivia's eyes sharpened. Courtesy is voluntary. What you are doing feels like pressure. His jaw moved slightly. That is not my intention. Intent does not erase impact, Captain. Sophia lowered her eyes for a moment. The sentence reached her deeply. She had spent years watching people excuse cruelty by describing what they had meant, while ignoring what another person had actually endured. Nathan placed one hand on the top of an empty seat. I am responsible for order in this aircraft, and I am sitting quietly in the seat assigned to me. You are refusing a reasonable request. I am refusing to be displaced because another passenger believes her preference matters more than my reservation. Caroline stepped forward. This is exactly the attitude I was talking about. David touched her arm. Enough. She pulled away. No, I will not because someone wants to make a statement. Olivia's voice cremained this statement. You did. The words struck cleanly. Caroline's cheeks reddened. Nathan glanced toward the open cabin door. A ground coordinator stood outside waiting. Every minute mattered. Fuel, crew duty time, departure sequencing. But Nathan made the wrong calculation. He saw Olivia as the easiest person to move. Not because the rules supported him, because he assumed she had the least power to resist. Ms. Bennett, he said, I need you to cooperate. Sophia looked at him in disbelief. Captain, she is in her assigned seat. Nathan turned sharply. I heard you the first time. Sophia went silent. Her face flushed, but she did not look away. Olivia felt the cabin shift again. This was no longer a seating, it was a test of authority, and Nathan had already decided whose dignity was negotiable. He faced Olivia once more. If you continue to disrupt boarding, I may need to reconsider whether you can remain on the flight. The words hung in the air. Caroline smiled. David looked down. Sophia's breath caught. Olivia stared at the captain of her own aircraft, and for the first time that morning, the warmth left her eyes. Be very careful, she said. Nathan straightened. Is that a threat? No, Captain. Olivia placed her boarding card neatly on the armrest. It is an opportunity to correct yourself before this becomes something much larger than a seat. Nathan held Olivia's gaze, but the confidence in his face had begun to harden into something less stable. Pride. The kind that appears when authority feels questioned. Behind him, the cockpit instruments gave off a low electronic hum. Outside the open cabin door, a gust of cold air moved through the jet and stirred the edge of Sophia's scarf. No one spoke. Even Caroline had gone still, watching to see whether the captain would force Olivia to surrender, and finally broke the silence. Nathan finally broke the silence. I am not expressions, Miss Bennett. Olivia's expression did not change. Neither am I. Then moved to 1C. No. The answer came without anger. That maiden's eyes narrowed. He was used to passengers complaining. He was used to calming them with a firm voice and a reference to safety. Most people backed down when a captain spoke with certainty. Olivia did not. She was not trying to dominate the room. She was simply refusing to be erased inside it. Nathan looked toward Sophia. Prepare 1Cs. Sophia did not move. Captain, Ms. Bennett has declined the seat change. I heard her. Then I cannot remove her belongings from 1A. His voice sharpened. I did not ask you to remove her belongings. I told you to prepare the seat. Sophia's lips parted, but no words came. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. She had a mortgage in Newark, a mother recovering from surgery, a younger brother still in college. Losing this job would not be an inconvenience. It would change her family's life. Nathan knew none of that. To him, her hesitation looked like disobedience. To Olivia, it looked like courage under pressure. Sophia slowly placed the tablet against her chest. With respect, Captain, the manifest is clear. Mrs. Whitman is assigned to 1C. Caroline laughed once. Are we really still talking about the manifest? Sophia turned toward her. Yes, Mom. Because the manifest determines where each passenger is assigned. Caroline's smile disappeared. You seem very comfortable correcting people who pay your salary. The words hit Sophia harder than she expected. Her father had worked maintenance at Newark Liberty International Airport for more than 30 years. He used to come home with grease on his hands and tell her that honest work had dignity, no matter who signed the check. Never let money confuse you about human worth, he would say. Sophia heard his voice now. She lifted her chin. I am trying to follow company policy fairly. Caroline stared at her. Fairly? Yes. To whom? The question exposed more than Caroline intended. David closed his eyes for a moment. He had seen this side of his wife before, with assistants, with people whose jobs required them to remain polite. He had often told himself Caroline was demanding, not cruel. That distinction was becoming harder to defend. Caroline, sit in 1C. She turned on him. You are taking her side? I am trying to keep this from getting worse. Your company spends millions with Meridian, and they are treating us like strangers. Olivia looked at David. Does your business relationship include the right to the passenger? Include the right to remove another passenger? Steve and Sim in disbelief. Nathan stepped between them. No. Nathan stepped between them. That is enough. This situation is now affecting the safe and orderly departure of the aircraft. Olivia's eyes settled on him. Nothing about my behavior is unsafe. You are refusing crew instructions. You asked me to surrender a confirmed seat. That is a service request, not a safety instruction. Nathan paused. The distinction mattered. In private aviation, captains held broad operational authority. They could delay a flight, remove a disruptive passenger, refuse transport when behavior created a genuine safety concern. But authority had limits. It could not be used honestly to disguise favoritism. Nathan knew that. Sophia knew it too. Caroline did not care. Nathan lowered his voice. Ms. Bennett, I am attempting to prevent escalation. Olivia leaned back slightly, then addressed the passenger who created it. His jaw tightened. Mrs. Whitman is a long-standing client, and that changes the rules? It changes how we manage the situation. There it was, not shouted, not dramatic, just honest enough to reveal the problem. Olivia studied him carefully. Nathan believed he was being practical. In his mind, difficult wealthy passengers had to be managed, accommodated, protected from embarrassment. People with less influence were expected to absorb the inconvenience. That was how unfair systems survived. Not through written policy, through quiet decisions made by people who believed some customers mattered more than others. Sophia looked at Nathan as if she had just seen something she could no longer unsee. Captain, she said, that does not sound consistent with our passenger care policy. Nathan turned toward her. This is not a training seminar. No, sir. Then stop challenging me in front of passengers. Sophia's face reddened. I am trying to protect the company. Aircraft. His voice filled the cabin. Sophia flinched. Olivia did not. Caroline watched with satisfaction. The conflict was finally moving in the direction she wanted. Nathan pointed toward the seat across the aisle. Ms. Bennett, this is my final request. Move to 1C or step off the aircraft while we determine whether you are fit to travel. Dave looked up sharply. That seems excessive. Nathan ignored him. Olivia's breathing remained slow. She looked toward the cabin door. 2 ground employees were now standing at the bottom of the stairs. They were trying not to stare, but they had heard enough to know something was wrong. Olivia turned back to Nathan. Are you officially stating that my refusal to give another passenger my assigned seat makes me unfit to travel? Nathan hesitated, only for a second. Yes. Sophia's eyes widened. Captain, she has not raised her voice. She has not threatened anyone. She has not interfered the crew. Nathan snapped his head toward her. Go to the galley. Sophia stayed where she was. Captain. Now. Her hands trembled, but she did not leave. Olivia saw it. So did Dave. The young attendant was frightened, deeply frightened. Yet she understood that silence could become cooperation. Please document that I objected, Sophia said. Nathan's face went pale with anger. You are relieved from cabin duties until further notice. The sentence struck the room like a slammed door. Sophia stopped breathing. Her eyes shone, but she refused to cry. Caroline looked away, suddenly uncomfortable with the damage she had helped cause. David stepped forward. Captain, this has gone far enough. Nathan raised one hand. Stay out of it, Mr. Whitman. Then he looked at Olivia. You have 1 minute to leave, Pete. The young woman stood alone beside the galley. The young woman speaks by a thread because she had defended a passenger's basic dignity. Something changed in Olivia's face, not anger, precision. She reached into her handbag and removed her phone. Nathan's voice became colder. Who are you calling? The person responsible for operations this morning. The person responsible for operations this morning. Nathan gave a short, humorless laugh. I am responsible for operations on this aircraft. Olivia looked up at him. No, Captain Brooks. Her thumb hovered over a private number known only to senior leadership. You are responsible for flying it. She pressed the call button, and at this moment, even that responsibility is under review. The call, connected before Nathan could answer, a woman at Meridian Operations, picked up on the second ring. This is Rachel Morgan. Olivia kept her eyes on Nathan. Rachel, this is Olivia Bennett. The voice on the other end changed immediately, not louder. Yes, Miss Bennett. Nate's expression flickered. Caroline noticed it. So did Sophia, spoke in the same calm tone she had used since the conflict began. I am aboard Meridian Flight 714 at Teterboro. We are still at the gate. I need you to place a temporary operational hold on the aircraft. Nathan stepped forward. You cannot do that. Olivia lifted one finger without looking away from him. Rachel confirmed the hold. There was a brief sound of typing. Then Rachel answered. The aircraft is now on operational hold. Dispatch has been notified. The low hum inside the cabin suddenly felt louder. Nathan stared at Olivia. Outside, the ground coordinator received a message through his headset. He looked up toward the open door, then signaled for the boarding stairs to remain in place. The departure had stopped. Not because Nathan ordered it. Because Olivia had. Nathan's face tightened. Who exactly are you? Olivia did not answer him yet. She spoke into the phone. I need the chief operating officer, legal counsel, and the director of flight standards on a secure line. I also need the passenger manifest, cockpit voice preservation protocol, and cabin incident report initiated immediately. Sophia's lips parted. David went completely still. Caroline looked from Olivia to Nathan, searching for some sign that this was a bluff. There was none. Rachel responded at once. They are being contacted now. Thank you. Olivia ended the call and placed the phone on the armrest. Nathan's voice dropped. You had no authority to interfere with this flight. Olivia looked at him for a long moment. You were given several chances to correct this. That does not answer my question, no. It answers the more important one. Nathan took another step toward her. His shoulders were squared. His breath came faster now. The disciplined calm he wore as a captain was beginning to crack. I will not allow a passenger to use personal connections to override authority. Olivia's gaze hardened. You used a corporate relationship to override is not the same thing. It is exactly the same thing. Your connections mattered, my that's matter. And 6pm lost some of its color. Caroline's face lost some of its color. David looked at his wife, then at Olivia. He understood before Caroline did. This woman was not calling a friend. She was giving orders. Sophia stood near the galley, still holding the tablet against her chest. Her hands had stopped shaking. Fear remained in her eyes, but something else had replaced the helplessness. Hope. Nathan pointed toward the open door. I'm asking you one final time to leave this aircraft. Olivia remained seated. On what grounds? Failure to comply with crew instructions. Which safety instruction did I refuse? You are creating a hostile environment. Sophia spoke before she could stop herself. She has not created it. Nathan turned sharply. You are no longer on duty. Sophia's face tightened. That does not make what happened disappear. The words surprised even her. She had spent years learning how to stay pleasant under pressure, how to smile through insults, how to apologize for problems she had not caused. But there was a point where professionalism did not mean silence. It meant truth. Nathan stared at her. You should think carefully about your career. Sophia took a slow breath. I am. Looked at the young attendant with quiet respect. Courage was often misunderstood. People imagined it as confidence without fear, but real courage was different. It was fear that stayed in the room. It was a trembling voice that still told the truth. Footsteps sounded on the boarding stairs. A man in a dark airport operations jacket entered the cabin with a security supervisor behind him. The operations manager was in his late 40s with a radio clipped to his concern written across his face. "Captain Brooks," he said, "dispatch has placed this aircraft on hold. I need to understand the situation." Nathan turned toward him. "We have a disruptive passenger refusing a seating instruction." The manager looked at Olivia. She was sitting upright. Her hands were visible, her voice had never risen. Then he looked at Caroline, whose arms were still crossed. Sophia stepped forward. "Ms. Bennett is seated in her assigned seat." Mrs. Whitman demanded that she move. I verified the manifest. Captain Brooks then instructed Ms. Bennett to give up the seat and threatened to remove her when she declined. Nathan's eyes flashed. "That is an incomplete stare," Sophia said. "It's accurate. It's astare. Is accurate." The security supervisor remained near the doorway. He did not reach for his radio. He did not move toward Olivia. He had spent 20 years dealing with real threats at airports. This did not look like one. The operations manager turned to Olivia. "Mom, may I see your identification and boarding card?" Olivia handed them over. He checked both carefully. "Your documents are valid." Caroline let out an irritated breath. "We already know what the computer says." "We already know what the computer says." The manager looked at her. "Then why are we still having this conversation?" Caroline blinked. No one had spoken to her that directly all morning. "My husband's company is one of Meridian's largest clients. That does not affect the seat assignment." David closed his eyes briefly. The statement should have ended the matter from the beginning. One rule, applied equally. Nothing more was required. Benson stepped closer to the manager. "This is my aircraft. I determine whether a passenger can remain aboard." Olivia rose slowly from seat 1A. The movement silenced everyone. She stood at her full height and adjusted the front of her navy coat. She did not appear angry. That was what unsettled me most. She looked controlled, certain, finished with warnings. "This aircraft belongs to Meridian Elite Charter," Olivia said. "The authority of its captain exists to protect safety, not privilege." Nathan gave a tense laugh. "And you speak for Meridian now?" Olivia reached into her handbag and removed a slim black wallet. She opened it. Late's inside was a company identification card, her photograph, her name. Beneath it, the title Nathan had never expected to see. The operations manager straightened Rick's instantly. Sophia covered her mouth. David's face went pale. Caroline stared at the card as though the cabin floor had shifted beneath her. Nathan said nothing. Olivia closed the wallet. "My name is Olivia Bennett," she said. "I founded Meridian Elite Charter. I own the controlling interest in this company. And this morning, I boarded as an ordinary passenger to learn how ordinary passengers are treated when no one believes they have power." The words moved through the cabin like cold air. No one looked away. Olivia turned toward Sophia. "You followed the manifest. You remained respectful. You told the truth under pressure." Then she faced Nathan. "You did the opposite." Nathan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time since he had entered the cabin, he did not control the room. Olivia held his gaze. "You threatened a lawful passenger. You misused safety authority. You punished an employee for refusing to participate in discrimination." Her voice stayed low. Each sentence landed harder than a shout. "You are relieved of command, effective immediately." Nathan did not move. For several seconds, he stood in the aisle with his headset hanging against his chest and his mouth slightly open. The cabin lights reflected across the silver's hair. The authority he had carried so easily was gone. Not because Olivia had raised her voice, because the truth had finally entered the room. The operations manager stepped closer. "Captain Brooks, need your company asks identification and flight documents." Nathan looked at him as if he had spoken in another. "This is not a lawful removal from command." Olivia remained beside seat 1A. "It is an administrative suspension pending investigation. You will not operate this aircraft today. You cannot make that decision in the middle of a boarding dispute." "I just did." Nathan's eyes flashed. "I have 30 years of flight experience and in less than 30 minutes to turn favoritism into a false safety concern." His face tightened. "You are twisting what happened." "No," Sophia said quietly. "She is describing it." Nathan turned toward her. Sophia flinched, but she did not retreat. The operations manager extended his hand. "Your identification, Captain?" Nathan looked towards the security supervisor near the door. The man's posture was calm but firm. There would be no shouting, no dramatic struggle. If Nathan refused, the removal would simply become more formal, more public, more damaging. He slowly pulled his identification card from his uniform pocket. His fingers trembled. He handed it over. The sound of plastic touching the manager's palm was almost nothing, yet everyone heard it. Nathan removed the heads and zoomed his neck, opened the occupant door and disappeared inside. Caroline saw and exhaled. It was not relief, it was fear. David stood beside her, silent. He had spent decades reading conference rooms. He knew when an argument could still be repaired, and when the damage had already become permanent. Caroline turned toward Miss Bennet. I had no idea who you were. Olivia looked at her. That is the problem. Caroline blinked. I mean, if I had known you owned the company, none of this would have happened. I know. The answer was cold. Caroline's lips parted. She had expected Olivia to accept the apology. Powerful people often accepted apologies from other powerful people because doing so kept business comfortable. Because Olivia was not interested in comfort. She was interested in what Caroline had revealed. You believed I deserved respect only after you saw my title, Olivia said. Before that, believed I could be pushed aside. That is not fair. Olivia's eyes sharpened. No, what happened to me was not fair. Caroline's face flushed. I was upset about the seat. I spoke badly, but this has been blown far beyond that. Sophia stared at her. For Caroline, it was still a seat. For Sophia, it was the moment she had nearly lost her livelihood for telling the truth. For Olivia, it was proof that a culture could look polished while allowing humiliation to pass as customer service. David, forward. Miss Bennet, my wife handled this badly. Caroline looked at him. David, he did not turn toward her. She was wrong. The admission seemed to cost him something. Not money, pride. He looked at Attila with a youth face that had lost its practice sooner. Olivia Studdins. You should have studied him. You knew. The seat was mine. Yes. You knew your wife was pressuring the crew. Yes. And you remained quiet until the consequences reached you. David lowered his eyes. The truth entered him slowly. He had always thought of himself as reasonable, civil. Better than Caroline in moments like this. But silence had protected her. His discomfort had never become action. That morning, he understood something many people spend their lives avoiding. Standing near injustice is not the same as standing against it. I was wrong, he said. This time there was no defense attached. Olivia's expression softened slightly. Not enough to erase what happened. Enough to recognize honesty when it finally appeared. Then remember this feeling, she said. The next time someone with less power is being mistreated, do not wait until you know who they are. David nodded. Carol stared at the floor. From the cockpit came the sound of a drawer closing. Then Nathan reappeared carrying a black flight bag. Without the headset and command posture, he looked smaller, more human. This will destroy my career. Olivia held his gaze. No, your decisions may damage your career. The investigation will determine how much. Nathan's jaw tightened. I made a judgment call. You made several. I was trying to protect wealthy major-client relationship. You were not hired to protect wealthy passengers from disappointment. You have no idea what captains deal with. Olivia took one step closer. I know exactly what captains deal with. Weather, mechanical risk, crew fatigue, medical emergencies, operational pressure, lives entrusted to their judgment. Nathan looked away. And because that authority is so serious, Olivia continued, it cannot be used as a weapon when someone refuses an unfair demand. The security supervisor opened the cabin door wider. Nathan looked towards Sophia. For a moment, shame passed across his face. He remembered the way he had spoken to her, the threat, the dismissal. She had been correct. He had known it. That was the part he could not escape. I should not have relieved you from duty, he said. Sophia's eyes glistened. No, sir, you should not have. He waited, perhaps hoping for forgiveness. Sophia gave him not yet. Forgiveness was not a service owed to someone simply because they had finally recognized the wound. Nathan nodded once and walked toward the door. His shoes struck the cabin floor with slow, heavy steps. Then he was gone. The morning air rushed in around the doorway. Olivia turned to the operations manager. Preserve all dispatch records. Interview everyone separately. No one is to be coached before giving a statement. Yes, Mom, and notify flight standards that Captain Brooks is not to be assigned pending review. Understood. Caroline lifted her head. Are we still flying? Olivia looked at her. That depends. On what? On whether you can behave toward this crew with the respect you expected for yourself. Caroline stared at her. For the first time that morning, she had no quick response. Olivia looked toward Sophia. You are restored to duty immediately. Sophia's shoulders dropped as a breath escaped her. Thank you. Do not thank me for correcting an injustice that should never have happened. Sophia nodded, but tears gathered in her eyes. She turned away and pressed her fingers beneath them before they could fall. Olivia lowered her voice. You did something difficult today. Sit back. I was terrified, I know. I thought I was going to lose everything. Olivia's expression became gentler. Courage does not mean you were not afraid. It means fear did not decide who you became. Sophia stood still as the words settled inside her. Outside, another vehicle approached the aircraft. A replacement captain was on the way, but the flight had already changed, so had everyone inside it. And Olivia knew the real investigation was no longer about one man, one passenger, or one seat. It was about how many people had been taught to confuse wealth with worth, and how many others had been expected to suffer quietly because of it. The replacement captain arrived less than 15 minutes later. Julia Foster climbed the boarding stairs with a black flight case in one hand and a dark wool coat folded over the other. She was 46, steady-eyed and known inside Meridian for making decisions without needing an audience. The operations manager met her at the door. Captain Foster, the aircraft is on hold pending a crew change and security review. Julia looked through the cabin. She saw Olivia beside seat 1A, Sophia near the galley, David seated in silence, Caroline rigid across the aisle, and an empty cockpit. What happened? Julia asked. Olivia answered before the manager could begin. A passenger demanded another passenger's assigned seat. Captain Brooks supported the demand. He then treated the refusal as a safety issue and threatened removal. Julia's eyes moved to Sophia. Is that accurate? Sophia nodded. Yes, Captain. Did Miss Bennett threaten anyone? No. Raise her voice? Disclose minute with crew duties? No. Julia looked toward Caroline. Did you ask Miss Bennett to leave seat 1A? I explained that I normally sit there. That was not my question. Caroline's mouth tightened. Yes, and after the manifest was verified, I believed the airline would accommodate a long-standing client. Julia set her flight case down. Accommodation does not mean taking something from another passenger without consent. Caroline stared at her. The words were simple. That made them difficult to argue with. David leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. My wife understands that now. Caroline turned toward him. Do not speak for me. David looked at her for several seconds. For most of their marriage, he had avoided public conflict. He had called it loyalty, patience, keeping peace. But peace built on another person's humiliation was not peace. It was permission. No, he said quietly. You need to speak for yourself. Caroline's face hardened. You are embarrassing me. You embarrassed yourself. The cabin fell silent. Sophia looked down. Julia watched both of them without expression. Olivia remained still, but she noticed the change in David. It did not excuse his earlier silence. Nothing could. Yet accountability often began in an uncomfortable moment when a person finally stopped protecting the version of themselves they preferred. Caroline's breathing grew shallow. She turned toward Olivia. I already said I was sorry. No, Olivia replied. You said you would have acted differently if you had known who I was. Caroline looked away. That is not the same as being sorry for how you acted. The air system whispered above them once. Outside the windows, a baggage handler closed a compartment door. The metal latch struck with a hard click. Caroline gripped the armrest. What do you want from me? Olivia's expression stayed controlled. I want you to understand why this happened. It happened because of a seat. No. The seat exposed it. Caroline's eyes narrowed. Olivia continued. You looked at my clothes, my bag. You decided I had less value than you. Then you expected the crew to enforce that judgment. I never said you had less value. You showed it. The sentence landed hard. Caroline opened her mouth, then stopped. For the first time, she had to sit with the difference between intention and behavior. She remembered the way she had scanned Olivia from head to toe. The disbelief when Sophia confirmed the reservation. The satisfaction she felt when Nathan threatened removal. She had not simply wanted the seat. She had wanted the room to agree that Olivia should surrender it. Her face slowly changed, not enough to become remorse, but enough for certainty to break. Julia picked up the aircraft logbook and addressed Olivia. I need approximately 20 minutes to review the aircraft status, confirm the crew change, and complete the command transfer. Take the time you need, Olivia said. Safety is not where we rush. Julia nodded. That sense mattered to her. Real safety was disciplined, specific, documented. It was not a word used to frighten people into obedience. Before entering the cockpit, Julia stopped beside Sophia. Are you fit to continue the flight? Sophia hesitated. Her throat still felt tight. Her hands were cold. Nathan's warning about her career continued to echo inside her. but she did not want fear to take the rest of the day from her. Yes, Captain. Julia studied her face. You do not need to prove anything by staying on duty. Sophia's eyes softened. I know. You may step off without penalty. Sophia glanced toward Olivia, then back at Julia. I want to stay. Then we proceed professionally. If you need a moment, take it. Thank you. Julia entered the cockpit and closed the door. The operations manager stepped outside to coordinate with dispatch. For several moments, the cabin held only 4 passengers and 1 flight attendant. Sophia turned toward Seawood. Isamast. Ishi Pot then stopped when she noticed her hand shaking again. Olivia walked toward her. Sit down for a moment. I am all right. You do not have to be all right immediately. Sophia looked at her. The kindness in Olivia's voice nearly broke the control she had held all morning. She sat on the jump seat. Olivia remained nearby, giving her space. My father used to tell me that doing the right thing would make life simpler, Sophia said. A faint, painful smile touched her face. He was wrong about that. Olivia nodded. Doing the right thing often makes the next few minutes harder. Sophia looked up, but it makes the years afterward easier to live with. Sophia breathed in slowly, then out her shoulders loosened. Across the cabin, Caroline watched them. She saw Olivia, the owner of the company, standing beside an employee instead of demanding service from her. She saw Sophia being treated as a person, not a function. Something in that image disturbed her more than any accusation. It showed her not need to humiliate anyone. David's phone vibrated. David. He looked at the screen and went pale. The caller was Mark Collins, chairman of Collins Global. David stood and walked toward the rear of the cabin. Mark, I was about to call you. The voice on the other end was loud enough to carry. I just received notice that Meridian has suspended our executive travel agreement and review. David closed his eyes. Olivia turned his dialed. David looked at his wife, then at Sophia, then at the empty seat that had started it all. He could lie, he could minimize it, he could blame the crew. Instead, he spoke the truth. Caroline demanded another passenger's seat. I failed to stop her. The captain handled it improperly. There was a long silence on the phone, then the passenger. Who was the passenger? David's eyes met Olivia's, the owner of Meridian. Caroline's breath caught. Mark's voice became cold. This is bigger than your wife insulting the wrong person. David looked down. I know. No, Mark said. I do not think you do. If she had been a retired teacher, a nurse, or a grandmother traveling alone, would either of you care this much? David had no answer. Neither did Caroline. Olivia watched them in silence. That was the question at the center of everything. Not whether people respected power after it revealed itself, but whether they respected humanity when power was invisible. Mark Collins stayed silent for several seconds. The only sound in the cabin was the faint rush of conditioned air and the distant growl of a tug moving across the ramp. David held the phone against his ears. His face had gone gray. Mark, he said, I understand how serious this looks. No, Mark replied. You understand how expensive it may become. That is not the same thing. Caroline stared at her husband. She could not hear every word, but she heard enough. David turned slightly away from her. Tell me what you want me to do. I want a written account from you before the end of the day. Full details. No public relations language. No excuses. You will have it. And until our board reviews this, you are stepping away from the Meridian account. David's hand tightened around the phone. I have managed that relationship for 11 years. You also stood inside that aircraft and watched another person get treated as if she mattered less. David looked toward Olivia. She did not appear triumphant. That made the moment harder. He had expected anger from her, perhaps humiliation, perhaps revenge. Instead, she looked disappointed. This is not easy to fight, Mark continued. The question is not whether you knew who she was. The question is why her identity had to matter at all. David swallowed. I do not have a good answer. Then find an honest one. The call ended. David lowered the phone slowly. Caroline leaned toward him. What did he say? David stared at the dark screen. He removed me from the account. Her eyes widened. For how long? I do not know. This is ridiculous. No, it is a consequence. Caroline recoiled as if he had struck her. A consequence for asking for a seat? For believing someone else should lose hers because you wanted it? I did not know who she was. David's voice rose for the first time. That cannot keep being your defense. The sharpness of his tone startled everyone, including him. He had spent years lowering his voice when Caroline raised hers. He had learned to soften facts, to redirect, to pay the bill and leave before the manager came over. He had mistaken avoidance for patience, so he saw the cost. Caroline looked around the cabin. Sophia stood near the galley. Olivia remained beside the forward seats. Julia was still inside the cockpit reviewing the aircraft. There was no one left to support Caroline's version of events. Her breathing quickened. So everyone has decided I am some terrible person? Olivia answered calmly. No one has the authority to decide your whole character from one morning. Caroline looked at her. But this morning revealed a choice you were willing to make. Caroline's eyes became wet. She blinked quickly, angry at the tears. I have been treated badly too. Olivia's expression changed slightly, not softer, more attentive. Most people have. My entire life I had to fight to be taken seriously. David looked at her, surprised. Caroline's voice dropped. When I was younger, people dismissed me because I came from nothing. They heard my accent. They saw my clothes. They knew I did not belong in their clubs or neighborhoods. Sophia watched her closely. There was pain in Caroline's face now, real pain. But pain did not erase harm. Sometimes it explained where harm learned to speak. Olivia stepped closer. Then you knew what it felt like to be judged before you were known. Caroline looked down. Yes, and this morning, you gave that same feeling to someone, sis. Caroline's lips trembled. I worked hard to get away from that life. There is nothing wrong with building a better life. Olivia paused, but if success teaches us to look down on the people we once were, it has not healed us. It has only changed our position in the room. Caroline pressed her fingers against her mouth. The words reached a place she had protected for decades. She remembered being 19 and standing at a jewelry counter while a saleswoman ignored her. She remembered a landlord asking whether she could really afford the apartment. She remembered promising herself that one day, nowhere along the way, that promise had changed. Somewhere I'm asking not to be changed. She had stopped asking not to be diminished. She had started demanding that others make her feel important. Sophia saw the realization move across Caroline's face. It did not make her innocent, but it made change possible. The cockpit door opened. Julia stepped out with the aircraft logbook in hand. The aircraft is mechanically ready, she said. Dispatch has approved the revised crew assignment. We can depart once the passenger matter is resolved. Olivia turned toward the operations manager, who had returned to the doorway. Has the incident documentation begun? Yes, Mom. Statements will be collected after landing. Security has also logged the event. Good. Caroline looked toward Olivia. Are you removing me from the flight? Her voice was quieter now. Olivia considered the question. Private operators had broad discretion to deny transport when a passenger became abusive or interfered with operations. Caroline's behavior had delayed the flight. She had insulted a passenger. She had pressured the crew. There were grounds to remove her. Everyone knew it. Caroline knew it too. Olivia looked at Sophia. You were the crew most directly affected. Do you feel safe continuing with Mrs. Whitman aboard? Caroline turned toward Sophia. For the first time, she was not looking at an employee. She was looking at the person whose job she had treated as expendable. Sophia took a breath. Her father's voice came back again. Honest work has dignity. So does an honest answer. I do not believe she is a physical threat, Sophia said, but I need clear boundaries, no insults, no demands, outside no service, no retaliation. Julia nodded. That will be the condition of travel. Olivia looked at Caroline. Can you accept that? Caroline glanced at seat 1 before. CS. Can you speak to Sophia directly? Yalan hesitated. Nice. Then she stood. Her movements were slower now, less certain. She faced Sophia. I spoke to you as if your job made you less important than me. Sophia held her gaze. Caroline continued. I used my husband's business relationship to pressure you, and when you followed the rules, I tried to make you feel afraid. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. Sophia's eyes filled, but her face remained steady. Thank you for saying that. Caroline waited. She seemed to expect more. Sophia did not offer immediate forgiveness. She offered honesty. I accept that you apologized. Trust will take longer. Caroline nodded. That is fair. The words were quiet, but they were the first fair thing she had said all morning. Olivia watched them both. Accountability was not humiliation. It was not revenge. It was the difficult bridge between harm and change. Sometimes people crossed it, sometimes they refused, but the bridge had to be built. Julia checked her watch. If everyone is ready, I will begin the departure briefing. Caroline moved to seat 1C. She placed her handbag beneath the seat and fastened her belt without complaint. David sat beside her. He did not touch his phone. Sophia returned to the galley and secured the final service items. Her senses were steady now. Olivia took her place in 1A outside. The boarding stairs began to move away from the aircraft. The door closed with a deep mechanical thud. The cabin pressure changed. The world's outside became quieter. But inside Meridian Elite Charter, the consequences were only beginning. Olivia looked toward the cockpit as the engine started. She had boarded to inspect one flight. Now she knew she would have to examine the entire company. The jet lifted from the runway and climbed through a layer of gray morning clouds. For since no one spoke, the engines held a deep, steady roar beneath the cabin floor. Light trembled across the polished wood panels. Teterboro disappeared behind them. Then New York became a distant line under the wing. Olivia watched the city fade. She had expected to test surf standards that morning. She had not expected to enculture problem before takeoff. Across the aisle, Caroline sat with both hands folded in her lap. Her posture was rigid. She no longer looked towards seat 1A. Dave stared through the opposite window. His phone remained face down beside him. Sophia moved through the cabin after the seatbelt sign turned off. Her steps were professional, but slower than before. She checked each latch, straightened each glass, confirmed that nothing had shifted during takeoff. Routine helped her breathe. At Olivia's seat, she stopped. "Would you still like your coffee?" "Yes, please." Sophia poured it carefully. The cup touched the saucer with a faint click. "I'm sorry it took so long." Olivia looked up. "You have nothing to apologize for." Sophia nodded, but her eyes she moved toward Caroline. "Mrs. Whitman, may I bring you something to drinks?" Caroline looked at her. The old answers rose automatically. Sparkling water, lime, no ice. But she paused before speaking. Water would be fine. "Thank you." Sophia waited. "Still or sparkling?" "Still." "Please." It was a small exchange. Ordinary. Yet David noticed the effort in Caroline's voice. She was trying to sound respectful now, but respect still felt unfamiliar when she was not in control. Sophia returned with the water and placed it on the table. Caroline looked at the glass, then at Sophia. "Thank you." Sophia gave a brief nod. "You are welcome." There was no warmth yet, but there was dignity. Sometimes healing did not begin with forgiveness. It began with boundaries that were finally honored. Olivia opened her tablet and connected to the secure cabin network. Messages were already waiting. The chief operating officer had sent a preliminary notice. Captain Brooks had been placed on administrative leave. Flight Standards had opened a formal review. Legal had preserved dispatch records, internal calls, crew reports, and security logs. Then Olivia saw another message. It was from Rachel Morgan at Executive Control. There in previous complaints involving Captain Brooks. Olivia read the sentence twice. Her fingers stopped over the screen. She opened the attached summary. 3 months earlier, a junior flight attendant had reported that Nathan pressured her to ignore a seating dispute involving a corporate client. The complaint had been closed as a communication issue. 8 months before that, a passenger had reported being threatened with removal after questioning an unexpected aircraft change. No safety violations documented. The complaint had been resolved with travel credit. 1 year earlier, a ground employee had accused Nathan of speaking aggressively after she refused to authorize an overweight baggage exception. The issue had been handled locally. Coaching recommended. No formal discipline. Olivia felt the temperature of the cabin change, though the vents still blew the same cool air. This was not the first incident. It was simply the first one that had reached someone powerful enough to stop it immediately. Her jaw tightened. Sophia noticed. "Is something wrong?" Olivia looked at her. "How long have you worked with Captain Brooks?" "About 4 months. Has he handled other passengers this way?" Sophia's eyes moved toward the cockpit door. Julia was flying the aircraft. Nathan was hundreds of miles behind them. Still, Sophia lowered her voice. "Not exactly like this." Sophia hesitated. She knew how internal investigations. People said honesty was protected, then schedules changed. Promotions disappeared. Colleagues stopped trusting the person who reported a problem. "What have you seen?" Olivia asked. Sophia gripped the edge of the service cart. He was different with major account passengers. In what way? He remembered their preferences. He let them board late. He approved things other passengers were told were impossible, such as extra baggage, last-minute route requests, bringing unlisted guests to the terminal before paperwork was complete. Olivia's eyes hardened. Did any of those decisions create a safety concern? Not that I saw. But they created pressure on the crew. Sophia glanced at Caroline, then back at Olivia. "Those passengers complained we were expected to solve it quietly. And if solving it meant inconveniencing someone, Sophia does not inconvenience someone else? Sia did not answer. She did not need to. Olivia looked at the complaint summary again. A company rarely lost its values in one dramatic moment. It lost them through exceptions. One favor, one ignored warning. One employee told not to make trouble. One customer taught that money could bend the rule. By the time the pattern became visible, people had already learned where power lived. Olivia called Rachel through the secure line. Expand the review, she said. I want every complaint involving command authority, passenger removal, seating disputes, or retaliation from the last 5 years. Rachel paused. That could involve a large number of records. Then assign a larger team. Yes, Mom. Do not limit it. To Captain Brooks. Another pause. Understood. And contact human resources. No employee who speaks to investigators is to have schedule changes, disciplinary action, or performance review adjustments without legal approval. Sophia looked at Olivia. Her expression changed. For the first time, she believed the investigation might protect more than the company. It might protect people. Olivia ended the call. David leaned forward from across the aisle. Are there other cases? Olivia looked at him. There may be. Caroline's face tightened. Other cases like this? Complaints that were minimized, patterns that were treated as isolated. David looked down at his hands. So this really is bigger than us. It was always bigger than you. The words were not cruel. They were precise. Caroline absorbed them in silence. For years, she had assumed systems worked because they worked for her. Upgrades appeared. Exceptions were approved. Employees smiled through discomfort. She had called that good service. Now she was beginning to understand that someone else often paid for her convenience. Sophia returned the cart to the galley. The aircraft passed through light turbulence. A glass trembled against its holder. The seatbelt sign chimed. Julia's voice came through the cabin speakers. We are expecting a few minutes of rough air. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Sophia secured the galley and sat on the jump seat. Olivia fastened her belt. The jet shook once, then again. Caroline gripped her armrest. For a moment, wealth, titles, contracts, and status meant nothing. Everyone was held by the same aircraft, and everyone depended on the same crew, so everyone trusted. Olivia looked across the cabin. That was what safety was supposed to teach. Human beings could occupy different seats, but their lives had equal weight. When the turbulence passed, Olivia opened a new message to the board. She typed 1 cent. We do not have a customer serve at the rest. She paused, then added before people. We have a culture that learned to protect power before people. She pressed send. The message moved through the company within seconds. And before the jet reached Florida, Meridian Elite Charter had begun the most serious internal review in its history. The jet began its descent toward Palm Beach beneath a wide stretch of clear blue sky. Sunlight poured through the windows and moved slowly across the cabin floor. The Atlantic shimmered in the distance. Below them, roads, canals, and rows of white houses sharpened into view. Inside the aircraft, the tension had changed. It had not disappeared. It had become quieter, more serious. Olivia's tablet continued to fill with messages from Meridian headquarters. Department leaders were being notified. Legal counsel had begun collecting records. Human Resources had issued a preservation order for employee schedules, performance reviews, and internal complaints. Then another message arrived. It came from the Director of Cabin Services. Several current and former employees are willing to speak. Some are asking whether their names can remain confidential. Olivia read the message slowly. She understood the fear behind it. Employees often stayed silent not because they lacked courage, but because they had watched what happened to others who spoke. A difficult schedule, a missed promotion, a reputation for not being a team player. Retaliation rarely announced itself. It hid behind business language. Olivia typed a response. Confidential interviews will be available. No retaliation will be tolerated. Any manager who interferes will be suspended pending review. She sent it. Across the aisle, Caroline watched Olivia work. Her glass of water remained untouched. For most of the flight, she had been staring at her own reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her still sexy wore the same expensive suit, the same jewelry, the same careful makeup. But Caroline no longer trusted the story she had told herself about that woman. Now she saw that success could also hide weakness. David leaned closer to her. Land, we should leave quietly. When we land, we should leave. Caroline looked at him. I know. No calls to anyone. No attempt to change the report. His eyes stightened her. Do you? The question hurt because he asked it without anger. Caroline looked down. I do not know what happens now. David's voice softened. Neither do I. For the first time that morning, they were not discussing influence, contracts, or reputation. They were discussing consequences they could not control. Sophia stepped from the galley and began preparing the cabin for landing. She checked seatbelts, collected glasses, secured tables. When she reached Caroline, their eyes met. Caroline, Sophia, a water glass. Sophia accepted it. You are welcome. Caroline hesitated. May I ask you something? Sophia glanced toward the cockpit, then nodded. What would you have done if Miss Bennet had not been the owner? The question silenced the near-sea seat. Sophia held the glass in both hands. I would have documented everything, and then I would have reported it. Caroline waited. Sophia's face became honest in a way that service training usually discouraged. And I would have been afraid no one would believe me. Caroline's expression tightened. Because of Captain Brooks? Because he had seniority. Because you were connected to a major account. Because I was new. The words were calm. That made them harder to escape. Caroline looked toward the floor. I never thought about what it could cost you. Sophia nodded once. That was part of the problem. Caroline's eyes filled again. This time, she did not blink the tears in slightly. Sophia's expression softened slightly. I believe you are beginning to understand, Caroline looked up. Is that enough? No, Sophia answered gently. But it is a beginning. She returned to the galley. Olivia had heard every word. She felt no satisfaction in Caroline's shame. Shame alone could make people defensive, bitter, or secretive. What mattered was whether shame became responsibility. Julia's voice came through the speakers. We will be landing in approximately 15 minutes. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. The engines changed pitch. The aircraft tilted slightly. Olivia closed her tablet. David looked toward her. Ms. Bennet, what happens to the Collins agreement? Will there anything I can do? Yes. He leaned forward. Give a complete statement. Do not protect yourself. Do not protect your wife. Do not pressure anyone involved. David nodded, and after that, decide whether this morning changes how you act when no contract is at risk. David sat back. He understood. Olivia was not offering him a path to save the account. She was offering him a chance to become more honest. Those were not the same thing. The aircraft dropped lower over the coastline. Palm trees moved beneath them. Sunlight flashed across swimming pools and parked cars. The landing gear extended with a heavy mechanical sound. This time, gripped the armrest again. This time, she looked at Olivia. I want to ask you one thing. Olivia turned. Would you have removed me if I had refused to apologize? Yes. Caroline swallowed. And you allowed me to stay because you thought I could change? No. The answer surprised her. I allowed you to stay because Sophia believed clear boundaries were enough to keep the flight safe. Her judgment mattered because she was the person you harmed most directly. Caroline looked toward the galley. For the first time, she understood that the decision had not been controlled by the most powerful person in the cabin. It had included the voice of the person with the least formal power. That was what shared across the room. Respect shared across the room. The wheels struck the runway once. Then again. The cabin shook as the engines reversed. The roar filled the aircraft. Everyone's pressed slightly into their seats. The jet slowed. No one spoke until it turned from the runway and began taxiing toward the private terminal. Olivia opened her tablet one final time. A message from the board chair waited. Emergency meeting confirmed for this afternoon. She replied with 4 words. Include employee representatives, too. The jet came to a stop. The engines wound down. Silence returned. The cabin door opened and warm Florida air entered the aircraft. Julia stepped out of the cockpit. Welcome to Palm Beach. So stood and faced Sophia. I will attend the first culture review meeting.
Sophia stared at her.
Me? Yes. I am a flight attendant. That is exactly why your voice is needed. Sophia looked overwhelmed. I do not know anything about executive meetings. Olivia gave her a small, steady smile. You know what policy feels like when someone powerful ignores it. That knowledge matters. Sophia's eyes shone. Olivia nodded. Outside, company vehicles were waiting, so were investigators. The flight had ended. The reckoning had not. By the time Olivia stepped onto the tarmac, she had made her decision. Meridian would not solve this with one suspension, one apology, or one training video. The company would change who was heard, who was protected, and who was allowed to define respect. The conference room overlooked the Palm Beach runway, but no one paid attention to the aircraft outside. Every seat around the long walnut table was filled. board members, senior executives, legal counsel, human resources, flight operations, cabin services, and at Olivia Bennett's request, one flight attendant named Sophia Reed. Sophia sat near the end of the table, still wearing her Meridian uniform. She looked out of place among tailored suits and expensive watches. Olivia noticed it immediately. She stood before the meeting began and moved the nameplate marked Sophia Reed to the center of the table. "She belongs here," Olivia said. No one objected. The meeting began. The chief operating officer projected the first report onto the screen. During the previous 5 years, employee complaints involving intimidation, preferential treatment, and misuse of authority had appeared more often than anyone expected. Most had never become public. Many had been resolved quietly. Some had simply disappeared into internal files. The room grew silent. Olivia looked around the table. "This is not the failure of one captain." Nobody answered, she continued. "This is what happens when good people become comfortable looking away." The words settled heavily across the room. The director of human resources leaned forward. "We believed we were protecting the company." Olivia nodded, "I know." Then her voice became firmer. "But protecting the company by ignoring the truth never protects the company. It only delays the cost." The board chairman closed his notebook. "What changes do you recommend?" Olivia already had the answer. No passenger receives special treatment that violates written policy. Every complaint involving dignity or discrimination will be reviewed by an independent committee. No employee may suffer retaliation after reporting misconduct. Every captain and manager will receive leadership training focused on judgment, respect, and accountability. And one more thing. She looked toward Sophia. Frontline employees will have a permanent voice policy reviews. Several executives exchanged surprised looks. Olivia noticed. "That surprise tells me exactly why we need it." Sophia lowered her eyes. She had never imagined that someone like her would influence company policy. The board voted. Every recommendation passed unanimously. The meeting ended, but the work had only begun. Over the following weeks, Meridian Elite Charter changed. Training programs were rewritten. Anonymous reporting channels expanded. Every executive attended the same workshops required for frontline employees. No exceptions. Captain Nathan Brooks resigned before the investigation concluded. His resignation did not erase the findings. The final report stated that he had repeatedly allowed customer influence to affect professional judgment. His pilot certificates remained valid. His reputation did not. Caroline Whitman wrote a personal letter to Sophia several weeks later. Not through attorneys, not through public relations, by hand. She admitted that she had spent years believing respect was something people earned through status. She finally understood that respect should be the starting point, not the reward. Sophia read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and placed it inside a drawer. She accepted the apology. She never forgot the lesson. David Whitman also changed. He asked Collins Global to create mandatory leadership discussions about ethical responsibility and bystander behavior. During the first session, he told his own story. He admitted that the greatest mistake he made that morning was not speaking when he knew someone else was wrong. Many people expected executives to speak about success. Instead, he spoke about silence. Months later, Olivia visited another Meridian flight without announcing herself. She boarded wearing ordinary clothes, no assistant, special treatment. Halfway through boarding, an elderly woman entered the cabin carrying an old canvas bag. She looked uncertain. She checked her boarding pass twice before asking a young flight attendant if she had found the corrected seat. The flight attendant smiled warmly. "You're exactly where you belong." She helped the woman place her bag into the overhead compartment. She waited until the woman sat comfortably. Then she welcomed her by name. No one looked at the woman's clothes. No one questioned whether she belonged. Olivia watched quietly from across the aisle. She smiled to herself. Not because everything had become perfect, because the culture had begun to change. One decision, one conversation, one act of courage at a time. Later that afternoon, Sophia knocked on Olivia's office door. "You wanted to see me?" Olivia stood and walked around her desk. "I have a new position I'd like you to consider." Sophia looked surprised. "I've only been here a short time. I know, I still have a lot to learn, so do all of us." Olivia handed her a folder. Inside was an offer to become cabin culture and service development specialist. The role would allow her to continue flying while helping train new employees. Sophia looked up with tears in her eyes. "Why me?" Olivia smiled gently. Because policies are written by people. She paused. But culture is built by people who choose courage when no one is watching. Sophia accepted the folder with both hands. I won't let you down. I don't need perfection, Olivia said. I only need honesty. Outside the office window, another Meridian aircraft lifted into the Florida sky. Passengers inside that airplane would probably never know what had happened weeks earlier aboard another flight. They would never know that one ordinary seat assignment had changed an entire company. That was exactly how real leadership worked. The greatest victories were often invisible to the people they protected. Olivia looked toward the aircraft until it disappeared into the clouds. She thought about the morning when everyone had judged her by a simple coat, a quiet voice, and an ordinary boarding pass. Power had never been the lesson, character was. Because titles can command attention, money can purchase comfort, authority can enforce obedience, but only respect can earn trust. And trust is what carries people safely through far more than a flight. If this story reminded you that every person deserves dignity before anyone knows their title, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more stories that celebrate courage, fairness, and the quiet strength of doing what is right. Before you go, leave these 3 words in the comments. Justice must win. They are a simple reminder that real change always begins when ordinary people refuse to stay silent.